Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the latest ITESOFT Insider View. I'm joined today by Colin Rigby from Fiscal Technologies. Colin, welcome, and thank you for coming down to join us today.
More than welcome, and a lovely sunny day. So I'm delighted to come down from Scotland and having brought the sun with me for a change.
Well, yeah, I think you must have done. I mean, if yesterday was anything to go by, it was horrendous down here yesterday, so thank you.
I try my best. The bill will be in the post.
I look forward to that one. Colin, as I say, thank you for joining us today. To start with, would you just like to give a short introduction to yourself for our audience, any that haven't come across you?
Absolutely. So I've been involved in finance now for nearly 30 years. I started as a trainee accountant doing account payables, which was the good old days where we stamped invoices and carbon copy and photocopied things, and progressed to looking after financial systems on a global basis, and worked for a variety of multinational companies, housing associations, etc. And I've spent the last 6-7 years working for Fiscal Technologies, where I head up the channel partnerships and alliances, and how we can embrace new technologies such as the technology Fiscal have and ITESOFT have for the benefit of our corporate clients and public sector clients.
Lovely, thank you very much. Obviously, you've mentioned where you are now, and I see you've got your shirt on, you've got your corporate colours there for the world to see, nice and loud and proud on that. Could you just give us, that sort of that elevator pitch almost of about Fiscal Technologies and the technology there that you're offering to your clients?
Yeah, so Fiscal Technologies have been around for about 15 years. We've gone through exceptional growth in the last 5 or 6 years. We sit in the AP space, or the P2P space, but particularly the AP space. We try not to venture too far out of that. And the key behind our technology is we are preventative prior to payment. So our technology runs once you put everything through your ERP system, but prior to payment, we sit outside that. We look at all the automation systems. We provide an overview and integrity of what's going on in your transactions prior to you making any erroneous payments or risk.
So almost removing that need for that post-payment audit and having those those large costs that can come with that. Actually, you're saving people that pain and that problem, or at least reducing the impact of that on them, because you're catching these issues before it even reaches that stage.
Absolutely, and I think Aberdeen Group have some statistics at that, and I think at the moment it's about £3 on average for an organisation to process an invoice. However, the minute that you have to look at errors or duplicate payments, etc., or recovery, that suddenly shoots up to about £30 an invoice. So if we can protect the working capital prior to it going out, and particularly in today's day and age, that it's not like 30 years ago that businesses were around forever, and you only have to look at some of the latest news headlines with multinational global brands hitting financial difficulties. You're not guaranteed you can get your money back. So we can help organisations protect their spend before it goes out. We're doing a good job in protecting organisations.
Phenomenally helpful for your customers, no doubt.
I hope so.
Well, as you say, rapid growth, so one's going to assume that must be the case. But
yeah, and I think we have a nice balance between different variety of clients. Both in the corporate sector across all various verticals, and also the public sector. It's a very even spread. Fraud and risk is right across the board. It doesn't discriminate. It doesn't pick on one person. It picks on everybody.
Yeah, and so similarly there, for ourselves, it's an application, if you like, that it's completely irrelevant what sector you're in. The benefits are there, and that technology can be used completely across the board, regardless of where you're sat as an organisation, whether you're a multinational, multi-site, or you're a housing association.
It's everywhere.
It's everywhere.
It's everywhere, and I think that is the key. The software is everywhere. Technology is now everywhere. It's part of the business toolkit nowadays. In fact, if you even go into schools, you have iPads for 10-year-olds, 9-year-olds. That's now how they do homework. And the minute you introduce technology, the minute you introduce automation, the minute you introduce complexity, that is a big red flag for more and more risk, etc. That being said, you can't inhibit technology and you can't inhibit development, so you have to embrace that. And the key is, how do you put overarching controls around everything that's going on?
It's funny you mentioned that with kids at school today and having computers and iPads, individual, personal, in their lessons. And a few months ago, doing one of our previous vlogs with my colleague Rory, and he and I were discussing, even in the space of a handful of years between his school age and my school age, that vast difference. I was at school, we were lucky if there was one BBC computer for the whole school, and he was saying no, we had suites of PCs and what have you, and we were talking in like I say, a handful of years difference between he and I. And then you bring that forward to today, and they're everywhere, and everybody's got access to this technology. And I think the people that are going to be coming into business, they're going to be far more comfortable with technology, and probably they're going to expect technology to be in business places as they come out of school, college, university, and they're going into that working environment. They're going to expect there to be technology there that's going to support their career and their roles.
Absolutely, and that's a very interesting point, because we're seeing a transition in AP now from it being a heavy resource with multiple staff, very manual, very labour intensive, to actually it's now an added value resource for the organisation. We've moved AP from being the lowest of the low to actually it's now a strategic resource within organisations, because the insight that they can bring on what's happening with suppliers or credits, or how payments are being processed, or how they can protect working capital. We have gone over the last 10, 15 years, we have streamlined our payment process, we've streamlined our suppliers, we've hit suppliers over the head now to actually get the best discount and the best deals that we have, and we have complexity, dynamic discounting systems, we have supplier portals. But actually one of the last things we now have to do is, if we can protect that spend going out, so an invoice is costing £3, not £30, that can revolutionise your bottom line and where EP focuses within organisations. And if you think that the average organisation lose 5% of their turnover to fraud-related activities, whether that be duplicate payments, erroneous payments, etc., if you can take 5% of a company's turnover and stick that straight onto the bottom line, you've got an entirely different organisation.
And that's where it goes straight back onto. And actually the amount of profit that an organisation has to create to actually increase that bottom line by 5% is phenomenal in comparison to making those savings and making those changes in accounts payable. I mean, you've referenced there, that yes, there's organisations who have done great work in streamlining those processes, in getting technology in place to support them. Something that we still regularly find is there are so many businesses that haven't, and they've still got these gaps. And they may have done something 10 years ago, and actually they've not kept up with the technology, and they've not kept up with that investment, and now they're slipping back again. And I think we see things like Making Tax Digital for VAT coming into play, and more businesses are coming back into that marketplace saying, well, hang on a minute, we were ahead of the game. And actually now we're in a position where we really need to be looking at this to keep up with what's happening.
But it's also to do with the change in mindset, John. Because the majority of people that are in senior positions have now been within organisations for many, many years. If you go back 20 years ago, you had one major software upgrade every 3 years. That is how software was sold. Then it became, every year or every other year there would be multiple upgrades, but it still involved a disk going into a server and a whole load of complexity and very, very, very wealthy clients. As organisations have moved to the cloud, technology is changing rapidly, because we can change things in the cloud without you even knowing as an end user, putting enhancements in, putting improvements in, etc., etc. However, as technology has opened up, that has enabled systems such as NHG Forensics to speak to ITESOFT, etc., etc. So it's no longer building blocks together. Everything is now collaborating and merging together, and providing an overall aspect. And I think you're seeing that also now in technology companies. 10, 15 years ago, there was a rush to control everything, and it was your organisation that controlled absolutely everything within that ecosystem. Whereas now technology providers are going, actually, do you know what? Your strength is there, our strength is here. Together, as a joint venture, we can move forward and protect, or we can enhance the customer journey and experience.
Simplify that message and focus on what you're good at.
Exactly.
As a tech vendor, that's very much where it's played towards.
Exactly, and I would suggest 15 years ago you and I wouldn't have sat here having that conversation, because we would be on our thing and you'd be on your thing.
Yeah, and if we'd even thought to have the conversation.
If that had even come
to
mind, I appreciate you'd have probably still been at school then. So
no, not quite. Close, but thank you, but not quite.
A hard paper round.
Yes, yeah, well maybe. See, you've alluded to it there, the key product for you guys, and whilst this is obviously an educational thing, I think it's important that for our audience you do give a little bit of an insight into that platform, maybe a few of the key sort of areas that you're focusing around at the moment, and what that's able to deliver to your customers as well.
So you need a sales pitch, right?
Not at all. Please, no sales pitch.
Okay,
short.
So as you're aware, we've been around 15 years, and we had a product in the market, AP Forensics, and AP Forensics, very successful, but was based on prem, and then latterly in the cloud. So what we've done over the last 2-3 years is we've developed a new product, NXG Forensics, which is a sort of enhancement of AP Forensics, but we've kind of come at it a slightly different angle. So we have two different centres. So we have a transaction centre, and that is looking at AP transactions, and that's looking at a whole host of algorithms and fuzzy logic to identify erroneous payments, duplicate payments, and risk within there. So that's the transaction centre, John. The second centre that we have is a supplier centre, and that's where we're looking at things such as what's going on within your master supplier file. Is there duplicate suppliers in there, the VAT numbers, a company number, a whole host of things that go in there, because the majority of fraud and risk actually emanate from the master supplier file.
Yep.
And that's one thing people don't do, and we'll come on to this later, but if you get one takeaway today, you have to maintain and cleanse your master supplier file. That has to be a key takeaway if you want to get on the front foot of protecting fraud and risk. So we've now got the two centres. So we've got transactions and we've got suppliers. So we know what's being processed and we know where it's being paid. But whilst we're identifying risk, what we have to do is now give you some actionable insights. So we then have a third centre, a report centre, and that will show you high-low invoices. It will move away from three-way matching and the very basic duplicate checking or risk checking, and into a whole host of much more complex KPIs and measurements for the organisation. And that then by default produces the fraud lens, and that is where we're looking at things that are high risk, that are abnormal. So you may pay somebody normally £100 and now you're paying them £10,000, or different elements like that. So you're moving away from just looking at duplicates or something being paid on the wrong account, and within that we have a host of recognised internationally fraud tests, and that is constantly developing. And as I alluded to earlier, we do a patch release now every 2 weeks to the cloud with new enhancements, new reporting, etc. And that together is making a very robust system that our clients take the benefit from. And as we're evolving the product, we're seeing us go into a couple of different areas. Shared service centres is starting to take off in the UK in sourcing, outsourcing, both in public and corporate sector, and I think the other thing that is happening as well is the amount of artificial intelligence, machine learning that's going on. So the product's now learning itself, and machine learning's been around for a long time in various different formats, and I think we have to be careful on buzzwords, but the new system, the new product takes into account all that and all the nice good things that are going on. So it's had a very successful launch and on a global basis, so we're very pleased how it's going.
Fantastic. Now, you've mentioned there with the fact that you're regularly delivering new updates into the application, that there's obviously a roadmap for you guys where you see this going. We had the absolute pleasure not long ago of being at your annual user conference. It was a fantastic couple of days. You had loads of people there, loads of organisations from your customer base, and you were Yes, you gave them a roadmap. I mean, you did some great entertainment there as well.
The hacker?
One of the evening, everybody being stood up and being taught the hacker. It was
baking a cake.
It was just incredible. Well, I'm not sure there was much baking involved, although we did manage to get all the candles lit. We were told to put them out again very quickly.
Yes, a smoke alarm risk, I believe, was the issue. So we certainly know how to put on a great event. And
Definitely.
And I think what was great there is we had 70, 80 different clients from all walks of life, from the UK and Europe in particular there. And this is the strength of the product, bringing all these people together to collaborate. And we developed the product based on user feedback and where they see the product going and what it is that they're looking to A, protect their organisation, but B, to make AP jobs easier and more effective. And I'm sure you'll agree it was a fantastic event where there was a lot of discussion going on, both officially during the day and latterly at night. AP know how to party.
Indeed. Once they're allowed out, anyway. So my question that I was going to go to there. So you've mentioned these improvements that you guys are doing. Is there a couple of really key things that are coming up for you guys within the platform? There may be little tweaks around what's happening behind the scenes in the technology, or maybe some different insights that are happening. Things that you guys have got planned to come up over the near future.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the insights that we're looking at is obviously continually to improve the fraud detection. How can we learn? How can we improve what's going on? How do we take advantage of new technology to embed that within our product? Some of the feedback from customers as well is benchmarking. Where do they compare to other organisations?
Okay.
How can they flag within systems issues of risk that may benefit others? So the advantage of the cloud is that opens up all these avenues for that. And I think, interestingly enough, one of the things that we are looking at is how can we collaborate more with ITESOFTs and other sort of companies that we can go in and we can produce all-round protection or an all-round system for customers. So the future is exciting.
Yep.
I think it's probably fair to say we have so many things on our roadmap. We now have to choose the routes that we go down particularly carefully.
Yeah.
But we always come back to people want insight. But the question I always ask is, I give you the insight, what's your action?
Yeah.
So we don't want to just give insight without it being able to be used or an action. And that's what we work very hard with our clients to look at as well.
You've mentioned there a couple of times now, the cloud and that the fact that gives so much more access to information. And certainly from our side as well, the supplier master data being such a focus that so many organisations do fall down on. Actually, traditionally, as an automation provider, the big problem that our customers would have is at the start of a project they would cleanse their master data. Over time, they would not look after it, and actually the whole automation process starts to slip away. And even at the end of the day, if we then passing information to your platform to deal with, actually the quality, and there's problems there that fundamentally stem from that. And something that ITSoft have done is looked at that. Now we've got cloud applications, now we've got data that can be used across a broader spectrum, with more customers being able to input into that. Looking after supplier master data is actually something that can be supported far more. We have a repository of this that we manage. You've mentioned machine learning and that kind of thing already, and we manage that to look after a central repository of master data, allowing for more protection at that very early stage, that very first capture stage, making sure that what's on that piece of paper or email or whatever it is actually right. Is that actually a real company? Is that really their details? And trying to offer that extra little bit of security at the top without our clients then thinking, well, hang on a minute, we haven't cleaned our master data for a year, oh God, who are we paying? That kind of idea. So it's really interesting that even though we've probably as organisations approached it from different ends, we've met at the same point of That's a big problem, and a big problem that most organisations actually really don't take on board, or maybe don't even realise until they speak to somebody like us, and we highlight the fact that this is a genuine area that's a risk to them as a business.
Yeah, so let's be fair. The majority of fraud emanates from the master supplier file. Cleansing the master supplier file is probably one of the most time laborious, boring things that any organisation needs to do. Equally, going through approval processes to get suppliers put on said file isn't a 2-minute job, nor should it be. Therefore, there is a reluctance between AP and procurement to take off suppliers that are no longer active, that are dormant.
Yeah.
Our view is if you haven't transacted with somebody for 13 months, you kill them.
Right.
You take them off the system, because by then businesses change rapidly. And if you haven't transacted with them, you have to question why. The other thing that we look at in some of the reports we will provide is how many suppliers are you transacting with once a year or twice a year? And actually, when you then distill it down, the majority of your transactions happen over very few suppliers. So everybody focuses on them. And it's a bit like approval processes and duplicate payments. We'll sit with customers who will say, anything over £5,000, it needs signed off by the managing director, the financial controller, or 2 or 3 other people.
Yeah.
And we sit there and go, well done. You'd put all these checks in for 10% of your spend. Or you'll get to organisations that will say, anything under £1,000 just goes through. It's not worth our time in process checking. Great. 88% of your spend is under £1,000. So we have a habit as humans looking in the incorrect areas. For example, I dealt with one organisation that was over the moon that they had 3 checks in place for anything over £15 million that was signed up. You would hope there would be checks in place. But there was absolutely no checks in place for things under £1,000 that equated to a couple of £100 million. So what you have to do is embrace technology and utilise technology to put those safeguards in, and that is where such as a NHG Forensics comes in. You're in partnership with ITESOFT, you're looking at the document and the capture of that document. And our system overlaid with your system then provides that, because you can say that document's false or it's fraudulent. Our system can't tell you that, but our system will pick up the company number is not right. The payment is out of sequence. The invoice number is normal alphanumeric. This is coming as numeric. So we can identify a whole load of other things. So we can provide that overview layer as part of the sort of sandwich to make sure that the organisation is protected.
And offer that real protection.
Absolutely, that's what it's all about. So,
obviously, we're talking here around fraud. A little bit earlier this year, I was involved in it was a kind of a panel discussion, if you like. It was web-based panel discussion where we were, again, looking at this kind of thing. And some of the things that I looked at in the build-up to that one was the ACFE report to the nations of 2018. Now, fraud is not my area of expertise, if you like, whereas if for you guys it is your all day, every day, your bread and butter. Okay,
that's almost fraudulent. That statement, John.
Almost. It's not quite though. Now, some of the things that I pulled out of that 2018 report were astounding. The numbers that were in there were incredible. I had to bear in mind this was a global report. It wasn't specific to the UK or to America or to anywhere else, and it was trying to give as big a picture as possible. And I think that's maybe why some of these sort of statistics and facts knocked my socks off. I'm not going to lie. Things like you've already said 5% of turnover being lost to fraudulent activity globally, and I mean it's just insane numbers. And then when in this particular report, they then actually put that into a value as well of their projection was $4 trillion a year.
Yeah. That's a big health service.
It's not half, is it?
It's a big health. I mean, absolutely. So the ACFE, the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners, a world-renowned body. But you as well as them, you can look at Crawl, you can look at PwC. Everybody's looking at fraud and risk and coming up with statistics. And actually, this is one of the interesting things. Whilst it is looked at a global basis, they do split it into individual regions.
Yes,
so, 30% of organisations in the UK have been hit by a fraud which is on a credit card. 30%.
Of course, and P cards are so popular as well. You know, that idea of giving people in the business cards to make their purchases with is, so many people do it.
Yeah, but now 42% of organisations in the UK now have an element of fraud protection spend allocated now in a budget. You didn't have that 2-3 years ago. 97% of organisations in the UK have had some form of fraudulent activity in the last 12 months. And if you want to put that into hard numbers, it was predicted that for 2018 that there would be £40.4 billion of fraud committed in the public sector and £140 billion in the private sector. These are now industries within themselves.
I mean, you think from a private sector perspective, you've already referenced, companies that have ceased trading over the last few years, and how I don't know, it seems to be this snowball effect. It's almost daily at the moment we seem to hear of another well-known established brand that's struggling. I think Links of London, I think, was in the news last night that they're struggling and going to, and actually you think if you take those sort of numbers that are being lost to fraudulent activity in the business in that sector, and actually the difference that could make to a lot of these bottom lines.
But that is only what people are admitting to.
Exactly. Or what they know.
You have reputational damage.
But what they know. It's
know.
Not even what they're admitting to, it's what they even know happened.
Absolutely. So you don't want to say, by the way, we've just had a fraud committed, because actually within that is showing that there's issues within your processes and controls. That fundamentally can affect your stock price, or it affects the business or organisation reputation, and then therefore the individual's reputation as well. You do not want to be the CFO or the AP manager that a fraud is going out. That being said, what you're now seeing is a lot more publicity around fraud. And 15-20 years ago, you wanted £1 million. You walked into a bank, sawn-off shotgun, you stick that at the window, you'd get your £1 million. Literally within 24 hours you're arrested. You would go to court, and you would be sent down for 8 to 10 years because aggravating circumstances. The issue now with technology is almost a white collar crime. So there's no victim. The victims are perceived. It's the victim is you're faceless. So I've had the privilege of speaking to some fraudsters who have now served the time and are now helping organisations and companies to try and prevent fraud. And I think it's been quite interesting getting into their psyche, because they believed that they had a right to commit the fraud. Some of them had been passed over for promotion. Some of them had decided that they were working hard in organisations and weren't getting bonuses, etc. So it's very, very different. The one interesting thing, the one common theme that came out, most of these fraudsters are very well educated. They're in a position of authority because they need to be in a position of authority to be approving and putting suppliers, etc., on databases. And that was an interesting thing. That this isn't low level, this is high level.
Yeah.
But the one thing that struck, they all viewed this as just a crime. It wasn't a big thing. It was an occupational hazard. They'd calculated they take some money out. They can have the time of their life with their family, their friends. They don't buy assets, so it can't get claimed back, proceeds of crime. They know they'll get put to prison for 2 or 3 years, but they also know within 6-7 months they'll be in an open prison. So they just view that as a little bit of a hardship. So it's been interesting to see over the last 2-3 years as well that the courts are now starting to take an entirely different stance on this, and the sentences are becoming a lot tougher, and I think that is a good thing. But at the same point, organisations have to come together and they have to put together a fraud plan. What happens if you suspect fraud? What do you do? Because if you jump in too early, you can destroy evidence for the police.
Yeah, I think, again, referencing back to that report to the nations, the 2018 version of it, the biggest detector globally for fraud happening was actually whistleblowers. rather than it being any sort of single other element that had as an individual piece, if you like, as a single thing. That was actually the most common way in which fraud was detected.
You're absolutely right, John. But the interesting thing on that report is 80% of organisations responded that the external auditors were responsible for trying to prevent fraud. The reality is only 4% of potential fraud was stopped. External auditors are there as external auditors.
Yes.
So it's
too late.
It's
fundamentally
left
too late
to whistleblowers. So you're now depending on somebody grassing their pal, grassing their mate. And the majority of fraud does occur by somebody that's within the organisation, who has just left the organisation, or in collusion with somebody in the organisation. They have to have an in. And that is where the weakness is. So you have to start pulling together things such as fraud plans, your tips to prevent fraud, and on that we'll share with you our 15 ways to prevent supplier fraud booklet, and we can give the details at the end of the vlog, but that'll be downloadable from the websites.
Yes, definitely. So you've referenced this already. One of the other things that came to me out of this was the fact that so much fraud happened within businesses as a result of weak internal controls, and that organisations simply don't have a plan to not only stop it happening, but to actually address the situation when it arises. And they're reliant on third parties or people that aren't explicitly detailed to deal with these situations to actually pick up and let them know that there's problems happening. Now, from a UK perspective, so if we bring this into the UK rather than looking at it from a global perspective, from your clients, from your knowledge of the, I don't want to use the word industry because it kind of feels a little bit wrong to reference fraud as an industry, but we've just heard the numbers. It genuinely is an industry itself. But there's some really key points that you guys would recommend to people to be thinking about and looking at, other than obviously sending you a PO and buying your software, that they can start working with and understanding.
Well, that would certainly help if people wanted to supply POs. It turned out to be a fantastic deal. Come more often. And
POs alone are something that most organisations might actually want to get a bit more proactive with.
Absolutely.
So.
And joking apart, you have things such as no PO, no pay. So the ERP vendors created a button that if it didn't have a PO was created automatically by clicking a button to match the invoice that was submitted. So everybody's constantly trying to create workarounds, and that happens. It doesn't matter whether it's in business, whether it's in sport. If you put new regulations and rules in, the first thing somebody tries, how can I break them? What is the workaround? How can I do this? How can I do that? What do we see? We know fraud's going to increase because the complexity is going to increase. If we're putting new checks in places every 2 weeks as part of our cloud sprint, technology is now doing that every 2 weeks, and if technology is doing that every 2 weeks, it's continually going to get more complex. It's quicker. What else has happened? There's prompt payment, so you're having to pay people faster and quicker. In the old days, you used to send an invoice in by pigeon post. Now you can email it, you can put it in a supplier portal, you can scan it, you can upload it yourself. You can now select to have dynamic discounting on that invoice, but not the other invoice. So where our system sits, we provide an overview of all that. And then you all obviously have the word I'm petrified to mention, but Brexit is going to have an impact in all this as well, because how people buy, how people transact is going to change on that. And you do have AI and your artificial intelligence, machine learning. That can be used as part of the fight to combat, but it's only part of the fight, and you have to get a robust solution that covers all parts for that. So that's where we see our product having to develop. That's where we see your products having to develop to provide that sort of shield for organisational spend.
So you've already mentioned during the conversation about the fact that the people who are committing fraud, they're smart people, they're well educated people, and they know that just because as an organisation, you put in a rule that says everything over £1,000 has to be signed off. All they're going to do is they're just going to put things through at £999.99. Technology improves, people's internal controls improve, but the fraudsters improve with that as well. They're not going to sit idle. And you mentioned machine learning as well this morning, and how that is something that vendors like us are making more use of to deliver benefit to our customers. But by the same token, it's what people who want to commit the fraud, if they're going to try and do this using digital means and try and take a person out of the picture, they're going to be able to make use of this technology as well. So our applications, they can't sit still.
No, absolutely. We've got to constantly evolve. And that is the only way we can tackle this. You'll never prevent it 100%.
No.
By default, murder is illegal. Every day a murder happens.
Yes.
All you can do is put preventative steps in to try and stop that happening.
So with that in mind, and I'm conscious that we're running very short of time, and we've got a heap of stuff that we really wanted to go through yet this morning. Your zoo, I know, the zoo story. It's or your Mars bars, which I know you were going to desperately trying to figure out how to weave that one into the conversation. But we are really running out of time. We have to try and keep to a limit. And what we're going to have to do, I mean, it's going to be such a hardship. We're going to have to get you again to come in so we can carry on.
Another day I have to bring the sun down.
Well, we'll look forward to that.
Excellent.
We'll try and do it in the winter so we actually get some sun there as well. That'd be fantastic.
Perfect. I look forward to that.
Would you be able to give a couple of things for the audience today to go and do in their organisation, to start looking at or thinking about, to try and give them a hand? I mean, we've mentioned, obviously, go and deal with your supplier master data, go and cleanse it, go and get rid of the dross that's in there, and make sure that the records you've got in there are actually valid and correct, and you haven't got 600 different variants of the same company just because Dave in one of the departments, actually, he only deals with this particular person in that company, so everything he does is always addressed to that one person. Try and keep that clean and tidy. Is there anything else, maybe a couple of other little tidbits you can give the guys?
You mean other than buy NXG Forensics and buy ITESOFT? Yeah, absolutely. Look,
well, we're not going to say no to those either.
No, absolutely. Look, I think what you have to do, you need to know who you're employing. So you do need to do background checks, particularly in today's day and age where so much can be bought online, whether it be degrees, etc. Know who you're dealing with. You also have to produce a fraud plan. Where are the areas of risk? What happens if you suspect fraud? What is the chain of command? How do you get on the front foot with fraud? Because when fraud actually happens, the majority of organisations then don't know what to actually do about it, and they either spoil the evidence for the police, or they try and do something themselves. So they need to know what that is. Take away temptation. Don't have the same person creating a supplier as the same person that can pay a supplier. Segregate duties. It seems simple, but when we're trying to do things faster and quicker, sometimes it's just easy for bill and account payable to be the same guy that's putting the supplier on. So you have to put the wall up. You have to put segregation of duties in there. And a lot of these are standard controls, but the standard controls that people buck, they weave, they ignore, because they think they're doing a good thing by getting that invoice on the system and getting that supplier on, because that means that they can keep them in payment terms, etc., etc. Reality, you shouldn't be buying from somebody unless you've done the due diligence on them already.
Yeah.
So you shouldn't have that as an issue. But that is where you can use a variety of forensics tools that are in the market, not just NXG Forensics, and that will help identify the root cause to stop these things happening in the future. And the other thing is, we've got a few clients have, if you remember, Neighbourhood Watch.
Mm-hmm.
They've put fraud watch stickers up. You're now being watched by NXG Forensics. Because fraudsters aren't going to do something that they know there is a higher chance of being caught. So by making fraud awareness visible throughout the organisation, not just within finance, but throughout the organisation, that will sort of help prevent fraud as well. So there are a few tips. There are many, many more, and we could be here all day. And I'm going to come back and we can talk a wee bit more about that and dive maybe a wee bit more deeper into the detail of fraud plans and what all they involve as well.
And in the intervening period, of course, for anybody who is joining us and listening to this, if you have got questions about that, reach out to you guys. Get in touch, have the conversations. It doesn't be necessarily, I know we've joked, buy the software. It doesn't have to be necessarily that, but actually just reach out to you guys and say, look, we need some idea, we need some help here, and
absolutely.
Can you give us those pointers?
So one of the things that we offer, John, is a free non-obligation risk review. So that is where you will provide us with an extract of your data. We will actually run it through our system, and we'll feed that back to you. We'll give you some points that you can go away and work on. You may then decide you want to purchase the system. If you don't, you don't. But you'll be given a management report that will highlight some issues. So it kind of gives you an independent overview of the integrity of your spend and your controls that you have within your organisation, and it's free.
Colin, thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure. I've really enjoyed having this chat with you, and without a doubt, I think we're going to have to get a second session set up so that we can definitely carry on with some of these points in the conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to catching up with you again.
Fantastic. And ladies and gentlemen, as usual, all of this will be available on the website, and what we'll try and do as well is provide a couple of handy links there into some of the key information from Fiscal themselves, so that you guys can see that and get involved and download that information as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you.